Another time.
Yeah, we will.
Right now we have a really great esteemed visitor. Debra Shore, when you were first elected, which this is going towards the end of your first term?
I just began a year ago my second term.
Yes.
So I first joined the board in late 2006.
And at the time, not only were a bunch of us, me and my girlfriends, and some of your girlfriends, very excited about having you on the Water Reclamation District Board, but also because you're an environmentalist. And I don't think we had an actual environmentalist, amazingly enough, elected to the Water Reclamation District Board. So since that has happened, do we have a few more of you there?
We do, Katie, and it's been very exciting because in my 7 years now serving on the board of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, I am seeing a paradigm shift, if you will, in that agency, and it's becoming a resource recovery agency. And we're looking at all those things that we used to consider waste and realizing that they have value. And we're trying to capture and monetize that value. So the phosphorus that's in our water and the biosolids that we used to call sludge, the methane gas that's produced by the treatment process, and even the water itself all have value. And how can we find uses for them that are beneficial?
You mean you're putting the reclaim back in the reclamation district?
That's the point, yeah.
Good gal.
Before we go too far, I'd like to get a little history of the Water Reclamation District because we just talked about we have more environmentalists on it. There must have been some vision in the early on days, though. I mean, we do have a reclamation plant that Evtushenko, the Russian poet, when he was visiting here, he wanted to go see it because it's renowned for what it does. And
I don't know the water treatment facility at, at Heartland?
I assume that's part of the water reclamation's stuff,
not exactly.
Or it's not.
Which one? The one by Navy Pier?
Yeah.
No, that's the water filtration plant operated by the city's Department of Water Management that takes water from the lake, filters it, delivers it to our homes and businesses. Then what used to be called the sanitary district steps in to treat the wastewater, our sewage, and now to manage stormwater. But to give you a little history, in 2014, the agency will celebrate its 125th anniversary. It was founded in 1889 as the Chicago Sanitary District with a goal of protecting the drinking water supply for people in Chicago by keeping sewage out of the lake. And they originally did that by reversing the Chicago River and digging the sanitary and ship canal that opened in January of 1900. And they used water from Lake Michigan to flush raw sewage downstream.
Such good neighbors we've been.
That lasted for about 20 or 30 years. Then they started building wastewater treatment plants, including the one at Howard and McCormick and Skokie, the one considered the world's largest in Cicero, our Stickney plant, a very large one at 130th and Torrance on the south side of Chicago. So today the agency treats sewage for Chicago and 130 other municipalities in Cook County and protects the drinking water by keeping sewage out of the lake.
Can I just ask a question that may or may not matter? When you just started this description, you started with the because Michael mentioned it, the water filtration plant, the Harding at Navy Pier. They're the ones who put the water in our faucets in our homes, and you guys deal with what goes down the drain.
Right.
Now, is that one of those instances where Chicago said, let's split these into two bodies and make more money, put more people to work? Doesn't it seem logical that some heads would be crossing over and watching what goes in and what comes out?
In many places, the water and wastewater utilities are combined, but not always. And
is there a plus to it? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. Not yet. Do we know?
I don't know the whole history of why these are separate, but it probably has to do with the different histories of developing water filtration and developing sewage treatment. And it made more sense to do sewage treatment on a larger scale to serve more than a single municipality. But the pipes that are under each city's streets for water and sewer are owned and maintained by that municipality.
So last year, for example, they replaced a lot of old pipe in Chicago proper, in the metropolitan area. I don't know what they're doing out in Cook County, but these are old pipes. So that's good news, right?
It is good news.
And to what extent do you cross the barrier to be up to date with, or be brought up to date by those guys and what they're doing to upgrade the system?
So the Water Reclamation District owns larger intercepting sewers that convey this wastewater from the city's pipes to the treatment plants. It owns and operates reservoirs and 7 wastewater plants around Cook County and a lot of pumping stations. The budget that we just passed was over $1 billion.
Wow. And you just had this great editorial in the Tribune just last week, was it?
December 26th.
Okay. Which a lot of folks, if they missed it, it would be good for people to look at it because, one, a lot of folks don't even know about the 7 wastewater plants that...
And a lot of people don't read the Tribune.
Well, there's that too. But you one of the first things you points that you look for or hope to create is this notion of an enterprise zone, for example, around the Calumet treatment plant, where industries could actually buy wastewater treated there, which they currently do not, right? You were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say a little background on it. I mean,
Okay.
On the challenge, before you run through a lot of details about what we should do with our water.
It's good. I need you,
How
Michael.
we should move into the future. But let's just get a sense of how much water we have, how important it is, and what we can do with it, the different kind of things that we need to do in order to secure our economic and environmental future going forward.
Michael, you noted in your earlier remarks how absolutely essential water is, not only for our survival as humans, but for most other species. And I like to point out that unlike fossil fuels, there are no substitutes for fresh water, the substance on which virtually all life depends. Here in Chicago and Cook County, we are enormously fortunate to live next to and have access to fresh water from the Great Lakes, which collectively hold almost 20% of the world's fresh surface water is in the Great Lakes. And yet we have orchestrated and manipulated a system where we take water out of the lake, filter it, send it to our homes and businesses for our use, where we essentially use it once, and after we use it, it's treated and sent into the system of Chicago waterways to empty out into the Gulf of Mexico. We do not put our treated water back into the lake. So our system is a net loss to Lake Michigan. And to me, it only makes sense that we ought to try to find ways to reuse that water one or more times before we send it down to the Gulf of Mexico.
And you do talk about what, ideas for going forward. As we go into those, let me just get a little understanding at the beginning. Are there other members of the Water Reclamation District? Are there other environmentalists out there that are really talking about changing the way we deal with our water? Are you a voice alone, or is there a chorus of you all singing together on this?
I'm seeing more and more of my colleagues and new members joining our board who are like-minded and definitely think that resource recovery is key. We hired a new executive director 2.5 years ago, David St. Pierre, who has been a visionary and a true leader in helping to move this agency towards resource recovery, and it's been very exciting to see.
Yeah, I thought your article in the Tribune was really wonderful. I mean, it was kind of opened up a lot of possibilities for me in terms of, you know, the enterprise zone, just the way we use the water, the businesses connected to that, the region, et cetera. So let's go through it a little bit. Katie, you had started off asking about the enterprise zone. Why don't you talk about your ideas for that?
So while water is a renewable resource, it's also a finite resource. And if it gets contaminated, it becomes more costly to clean it and make it usable, and sometimes it can't be fully cleaned. And as water pressures grow elsewhere in the country and in the world, where they don't have as ample a water supply as we have, people will be looking at us and saying, are you being careful stewards of this precious resource? There are many industrial uses that don't require water that's drinkable quality to use. In fact, our agency is in discussions with the Ford Assembly Plant, not too far from our Calumet plant, because they use more than 500,000 gallons a day of drinking water to prepare cars to be painted.
Wrong.
They may be able to use our treated wastewater more cheaply and effectively, freeing up that potable water for human use and other uses. And that's the kind of thing I want to look at is, are there industrial uses? And could we attract the water-intensive industries of the future? 20, 25 years ago, we didn't even know about data centers or server farms that now require a fair amount of water for cooling. What are those server farms of the future that we can attract to a radius close to our sewage plants to provide this treated water for their use? And that will help grow jobs, grow our economy, and be a responsible use of our resources.
Well, sounds like you're actually planning for the future. What a refreshing change. You also mentioned something called the Milwaukee Water Council, something you'd like to see duplicated here, something of a consortium of all the interested parties. Did you just describe what would be the result of that, or can you just enlarge on that so people know what the Milwaukee Water Council would look like if it were here as well?
Milwaukee is ahead of Chicago in this regard in pulling together a robust coalition of a lot of different resources. Their university and academic resources, their industries, their utilities, to take advantage of and look at their water resources. And I like to mention a wonderful environmental history of Chicago called Nature's Metropolis that William Cronin wrote years ago. And he says Chicago became a great metropolis because of the intersecting geographies of nature and capital. And by that he meant not just financial capital, but human capital, our creativity, our ideas, the great thinkers and visionaries we had. We can do that again if we pull together the rich research capacity we have in our universities, the utilities, and the other human capital of creative thinkers, our tech sector, and look at our water resources and see what can we do here.
Well, that works very well when you've got enlightened leadership, like, say, I don't know, yourself. But we have had a lot of years of not enlightened leadership here. I mean, because we don't get talking, leaders from the city of Chicago talking to the residents about wise water use. I mean, the closest we came was when Mayor Daley said, turn that water off when you're brushing your teeth. Because he had just figured that one out.
So what are the obstacles?
The next thing one of the things that you said that I loved that was on the list was scrap Peatone for all the right reasons. Why would you?
For those people who don't know, Peatone is a proposed airport to the south.
Yeah, and it was land bought up by a bunch of knowledgeable politicians.
Including Mayor Daley.
And the Jackson boys, etc. Anyway, Peatone also sits in some of the greatest some of the greatest soil on the planet. We have it right there. Why would we pave it over when we do not need yet another airport? So I'm really, yes. And you also propose something that would replace, the kind of jobs and economic push that was supposed to be in your article. Would you describe what you're proposing instead?
So thank you, Katie. My point is that we need land producing food close to cities so that we're not transporting food 1,500, 2,000 miles, using up valuable fossil fuels to do so, to get food to where people live.
Right.
I am totally sympathetic to the need and desire to create jobs in a part of our region that needs them sorely. And I remember speaking with Congressman Jackson Jr. years ago, who said at the time the Salem Baptist Church was the largest employer south of the Field Museum because they had 150 people working there. And I believe he was pushing for the airport because it would create many jobs.
Sure.
We need to do that. Those jobs, though, can be created by investing in transit, in our rail system, in high-speed rail, and my idea was to create a hub for training sustainable agriculture.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where this farmland is, to grow the boutique crops where people can earn a living wage that we in a city provide a market for.
Yeah.
And to do the research on how we can have an agriculture for the future.
Debra, one thing I just remembered while we were talking here was that you did point out in your article that one of the concrete companies, Ozinga I believe it is, always like that name, I see their trucks, that they developed a new cement that's porous so that we don't have all this runoff water. Water can actually go down in the ground. Is there a lot of technological advancement on the horizon for how we deal with water? I know you have some chemicals here to show us, or little beads of things.
I'd love to tell you about those in just a moment. I foresee a lot of innovation in the water sector. In fact, I tell young people, if you want to go into an arena where I believe there will be guaranteed jobs, do something with water. Invent systems to use rainwater, or what's called gray water, the water from our dishwashers, our washing machines, our showers, to flush our toilets. It doesn't make sense to use drinkable water,
Potable water.
sitting in a wheelbarrow called a toilet, waiting to convey our waste to a sewage plant.
It's incredible.
So the innovations of the future will be ways to use our used water for for irrigation of our lawns and for conveying water from our toilets. But also in how we manage rainwater. With fresh water, pretty much delivered free of charge right to our door, and yet we have a system organized to get it away from us as fast as we can.
Right.
How do we keep it where it falls? How do we recharge our underground water supply? How do we slow the flow into our sewer and stormwater pipes so that they have more capacity to deal with these rainstorms that we're seeing?
One of the other things that just came to mind was the whole question of fracking. And we had a guest recently on the show from Southern Illinois who talked about some of the problems that the fracking is bringing to farmers and residents